Is there anything that you would advise a doodle parent who's looking for a trainer? How to find one that's a good fit?
Well, you want a trainer who likes doodles. I
Yeah.
confess that when they first came out, I didn't like them.
You're not
Now,
alone.
fast forward years later, I quite like them now, okay?
Mhm.
So, they definitely grew on me, and their cuteness is kind of their superpower, you know?
Yeah.
So, I would say for when vetting for any trainer, especially somebody with you got a doodle, it's just a lot of energy. You wanna find a trainer who's certified. So, you wanna go to one of the certifying bodies, PPG, IAABC, the
Mhm.
Academy, we've got a referral list. Find somebody who's taken the time to get themselves educated and certified rather than they self kind of proclaimed as a dog trainer.
Yeah.
You want to avoid harsh methods. There's no need for them, and as we've been saying, they carry side effects, and you don't want to trade off some of that joy and stuff for a dog who's now got a fear problem, because good luck on doing that. That's really tough stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you want to be careful and find somebody who likes doodles. There are still some trainers who make them crazy, and these are trainers I think generally that they don't like activity levels, that they don't like designer dogs. They don't like that kind of thing. If they're biased against, and you also want to find a trainer who's going to treat you well. It used to
Yeah.
be that trainers would kind of guilt trip the owner a lot and say, you're the problem and you've got to be more alpha or strong or what
Yeah.
have you. It's not like that. All you have to do is somebody who's going to be kind to you, kind to your dog, hear
Yeah.
what your priorities are and fix the problems that you want fixed. Not
Yes.
kind of impose their, sort of like, I think you should teach this.
And you kind of touch on some red flag words that people might use to describe their
Yeah.
training methods
If
in
they
the
if they
book?
describe their training methods as sort of somehow magical, okay, so if
Mm.
there's if it's not transparent, so it's like, how do I don't motivate the dog. I don't use food. I don't use, I don't use anything. I just kind of talk to the dog in dog language. If it
Yeah.
sounds kind of woo,
Mhm.
careful. That's often a code for, I'm actually going to hammer your dog to pieces, and that's how I do it. Or if they say every
Mm.
dog is completely different and I reinvent training for each and every dog. Okay, hang on a second. So if you look at what these people are actually doing, they're shocking the crap out of every single dog. So watch out for that kind of weasel speak, that marketing speak. When it sounds like, there's, 'cause so they're not transparent about motivation, or they think there doesn't have to be motivation. You have to have some sort of
Mhm.
force of personality. So if they're saying that you have to have the right energy, careful. Watch out for
Yes,
that, like,
brilliant.
that red flag word energy. It's really
Mhm.
usually a code for, I'm going to be harsh.
Yes, and balanced.
Balance, yes, yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
I don't limit myself to food or force. I use it all.
Yes, or I start with positive and I only use those tools
Yeah,
if
I
it's needed.
enforce by hammering the crap out of your dog. Yeah, well done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So those tools don't have to be on the table
Nope.
for your dog to be trained effectively, no
No, no.
matter
I mean,
what kind of dog you have.
yeah. Yeah, the positive training in terms of proof of concept, it's something that's been very well vetted. It's
Mhm.
been around a long time. If you look at bodies, I mean, increasingly all your certifying bodies are saying, you know what? We're not certifying you if you do this, or we're taking away your certification if you do this. And the reason for that is it's been amply demonstrated now that you don't have to do it.
Yes. And we don't need to damage our relationships with our dogs. We can still have the same outcomes.
Now we know that that's basically abuse, and that's
Mhm.
where it's kind of going with dog training.
I agree. You see a lot of kind of dog training trends follow kind of parenting trends just a few decades behind.
Yeah.
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 A thing that some trainers will recommend against and some vets will recommend against that you would challenge a little bit is dog parks. And are they all bad and all an evil option for our dogs?
Not necessarily.
Yeah.
I think sometimes for sure that I think there are dog parks that are very much like the Wild West, and there's all
Yeah.
sizes and types of dogs, and people are not paying attention and so on. And it's possibly a bit too much of a free for all.
Mhm.
But in terms of dog parks generally being evil, I'm wondering why I've attended, I don't know, probably 50 or 100 in this country and around the world, kind of just gone and seen them. How come I'm not seeing this mayhem that people are describing? If dog parks were universally bad, I've had tremendous luck, because what I have seen is people who generally are there, they're generally keeping an eye on their dogs. Their dogs are generally quite pro-social. They like playing. And a few things to look for. You want separation
Yes.
by size. You
Mhm.
want to definitely have the under 25 pounds and the over in different parks. That's
Mhm.
important. If you want to also make sure that the dog's in there, you don't want to bring your dog to a dog park if he doesn't like the company of other dogs. So if your
Yes.
dog is not socialized to dogs, dog parks are not a good idea. But if your dog loves other dogs, it's a great idea. I'm not as scared off as some people. I worry sometimes that people are alarmed at watching dogs be with each other because it
Mhm.
can look quote unquote out of control, but they're not in control. They're running and they're playing and they've got their mouths on each other and they're chasing and they're sometimes having a conflict over a resource, or they're arguing, or they're mobbing the new dog that came in. The new dog is briefly like, "Ooh, that's a bit much," and then he's fine. And people find that alarming. We find that a bit too much. And so therefore we avoid that. But it's a bit sad. It's kind of like saying, I'm an introvert, therefore everybody's an introvert, therefore nobody should ever go to a cocktail party.
Mm.
I don't think it's one size fits all. So if
Yeah.
you have a dog that loves to play with other dogs, hard pressed to believe that dog parks are therefore not good.
And I agree with you in deepening your understanding of dog body language, because if we're looking at it from like a human lens, seeing teeth at all
Oh
is a
yeah.
hard no. Hearing
Yeah.
growling is
Oh yeah.
and
Yeah. Oh, we're wired as prey species. We have this thing in,
yes.
in the academy, we affectionately call it FOD, fear of dogs. Kind of like we're wired to find, cheesecake tasty.
Yeah.
We're also wired to fear animals with pointy teeth. And when those animals with pointy teeth are around each other and threatening to use them or using them, and dogs argue just like us. I mean, people on
Mhm.
social media argue, and we sometimes write a letter to the editor, and we sometimes swear at another driver in traffic, and we do all those things that are normal kinds of things. You argue with your spouse, you get mad. As
Yeah.
long as we're not harming each other, as long as we're not pulling a knife, we're not shooting at each other, we're not assaulting each other, generally speaking, human conflict resolution is fine. It's nonviolent. Dogs also have conflicts. They have
Mhm.
conflicts among themselves. The way they deal with their conflicts is they growl and snarl and snap and they bite with greatly inhibited force. To say that if a dog does that, he shouldn't be around other dogs is very much like me saying, Corinne, I have seen you occasionally on social media be a little bit testy. No more humans for you. Or we're going to go ahead and euthanize you because you argued
Mm.
with your spouse. You know what I mean? I worry about people saying, well, dog can't be around other dogs because he sometimes growls another dog off his toy.
Mhm.
I think we're letting our own sort of comfort where we should be sort of addressing, wow, isn't it interesting? I find normal dog species, normal behavior to be alarming. And we want to be empathetic with people, but we also want to let them know that that's kind of normal for dogs.
There is another human kind of social pressure I see that mirrors when I used to take my kids to the playground. The like, I'm a good parent.
Yeah.
So I step in if my kid starts climbing the slide. To me, that's a child appropriate like activity. They're, using the equipment in different ways and stepping in that way, or judgment if my dog is getting a little humpy or is being more vocal, that I'm like a bad dog parent and it's mortifying and we're never going back there, as opposed to
Yes.
helping my dog out.
I completely hear you. That sort of,
Mhm.
it is, people are trying to be hyper responsible. They're
Yeah.
trying to have their dog under control.
Same on
Um,
walks.
yeah,
Right.
yeah, that somehow it is, like you say, it's mortifying.
Yeah.
And yeah, and that can definitely get in the way of people letting dogs kind of do normal level stuff. Now, we do want to be responsible. If your dog bites in an injurious fashion, so he sends other dogs to the veterinarian when he argues, or your dog is afraid of other dogs, then it absolutely is the responsible thing to maybe not have that dog at a dog park, or not have that dog around other dogs.
Mhm.
But that doesn't mean the norm, we should be, clamping down on the normal stuff. But I take your point that people do want to do the right thing, and the social pressure from other owners. If there's one owner in the park who thinks that it's wrong for dogs to occasionally growl at each other, that owner can then infect everybody with and then we're all going to try and, make sure that that person is
Yeah.
happy.
And on the other side of the spectrum, I do interrupt dogs in their play and give breaks. And I don't subscribe to the let them work it out at all costs.
Oh, of course. Yes. No, of course not. No. Right.
We're there to help our pups. One student, kind of taking a left turn and going to your book a little bit, one student loved your explanation on how to teach fetch because you kind of talk about for some dogs it is hardwired and for some we light it up in them
Right.
and teach it. So she's using multiple balls to teach fetch to try to prevent the guarding. But her dog instead is starting to feel a little confused and is gathering multiple balls and not knowing is not catching on to this game and shaping. Can you share a little bit more detail? And you talk about guarding in mine, but you also get into more about fetch in Culture Clash.
Couple of things. One is if the point is enrichment, letting the dog gather balls might be just letting that dog run some software that that dog wants to run. And
Yeah.
I'm not sure I would necessarily say, oh my God, this is the end of the world. It's not bad. Letting dogs run their software when it's not hurting anybody is not a bad thing. Trying to prevent dogs from running the software that we kind of programmed into them is generally speaking not healthy. So if the dog wants to gather a bunch of balls, it can be an activity. If they want to play fetch, there are other ways to get dogs, because border collies can famously do this too, which is they bring the ball back and they're like, I'm dying for you to throw it, but if you reach for it, then that hits this other
Yeah.
software kicks in, which is don't touch my stuff.
Right.
So you can definitely teach them a thing, which is you can drop the ball and then back up. So you basically teach it as a trick initially. So you first of all teach back up as a trick without any toys present. Then you teach the dog to back up for a toy toss. Okay, in the house. And then you start bringing it into the fetch game, which is I'm not throwing it. If you want to bring me back the ball, that's all fine and dandy. I'm not even reaching for it until you back up. Okay, and then the dog backs up, does a down, and then you redo it. So you get a ritual like that going, and that's sort of a tidier way to do it. The multiple balls isn't working.
When we're talking about DRIs and particularly jumping is something that we work on with our doodles a lot. I love how you explain generalization. And I would love to touch on that a little bit with sit. You talk about how that's such a go-to fundamental.
Yeah.
A lot of pet parents are frustrated. Sit works beautifully inside. Then it all falls apart when we're outside, when they're literally touching grass, when they see another dog. Can you help explain what's going on there?
Yeah, that's generally speaking what we call it in dog training. We affectionately say you're administering the grade 12 quick quiz to the grade 8 student. So in other words, you got, you're doing training, and training is this sort of step-by-step endeavor where you get gradually harder and harder and harder. And sort of the final level of hard is doing it for a dog who's pro-social with dogs or what have you, doing it in that context. If you make too big a jump, if you go from in the house, he's great. If you then assume he knows it, you're getting yourself into trouble because there's not really knowledge. All there is increasing levels of difficulty. And what you need to find is the intermediate levels of difficulty between in the house without distractions and outside with the worst distractions. And so there are probably like 10 or 12 little steps that you need to do in between that to distraction proof the dog. And you can do distractions in the house where you teach the dog to sit, even though I'm throwing toys around. Teach the dog to sit, even though I just came home. Teach the dog to sit, even though I'm holding a treat over your head. Teach the dog to sit now in the driveway, without any distractions around. Now we're going to teach him to sit on the sidewalk, but there's nothing around. Now we're going to teach him to sit in the sidewalk with the treats coming from above. Now we're going to bring in a dog, but he's going to play with that dog for 10 minutes and be a little bit bored with that dog. And then we're going to practice with that dog. So you have these little levels, jumps in level of difficulty that are more gradual, and then you can get there.
One student asked if I'm trying to teach not to jump, but while I'm doing this proofing, they go into a down. Do I need to pull them back up into a sit? I think so too.
I wouldn't worry about that.
Yeah.
If you're doing competitive obedience, it's a huge national tragedy if the dog does a down instead of a sit. But for pet dogs, if they're not jumping, I'd be inclined to say, okay, if you're not jumping, it's fine. Now, if, some people do absolutely want sit because they want to then bend over and give the dog the facial proximity, and that might be harder in a down. But if there's not an overriding reason, I wouldn't worry about that.
Yes. And we're having an alternate behavior that would be comfortable for guests walking in the door. Yes.
Yeah.
And we're teaching calm behavior.
Yeah. You're teaching the dog to do something that you prefer.
Yeah.
In other words, it's legal.
Yes.
If jumping is illegal, what should he do instead?
That's the crux of so much of what we do.
Yeah.
Yes.
He can't be doing nothing. He has to exist. So what do you want him to do?
Is there anything else on these topics and with your book that you would like to add to our listeners?
No, I just my gratitude for you. I mean, they're asking good questions. These are, this is good stuff, and your stuff. So it's
Oh,
so
thank you.
gratifying to see people that are really trying to do right by their dogs.
Yes. We've really invested pet parents that just are hungry to learn and want the best, 10, 15 years with their dog.
Yeah.
I know that we have pet parents listening, and Jean has written several books, but I highly recommend Culture Clash if you want a broader understanding of how your dog works and how training works. A lot of our doodles can struggle with resource guarding, and if you want to know how to prevent it or how to work on it, mine is fantastic. And for people who are thinking about becoming dog trainers, if this has like lit a spark hearing from Jean get in the nitty-gritty, I can't recommend the Academy for Dog Trainers enough. It is known as the Harvard for dog trainers for a reason. And congratulations again on the 25th year.
Thank you so much.